Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Sean, and in this video, it'll be all about our footers for the house. We'll go over squaring it up and laying out the footers, digging our 3-foot drop footer for our frost line, and installing our forma drain system. So let's get started. So if you guys remember from our drawing, we have somewhat of a square-shaped foundation, but we do have a bump out on the back and the front for a front porch. So right now we're looking at the front of the house, which will be at ground level, and then we have the walkout basement. So we have this bump out, this 3-foot bump out for the front porch. But the first point we're going to get is actually going to be over here at this point of the square. So we'll arbitrarily pick this point, which is what we're going to get here. And we will pull 52 feet this way across the foundation. But we'll also have to account for the extra distance on our footer. So we have a 20-inch footer, but the ICFs that we're going to be putting on here are only 13 1/4 wide. So we have an extra 6 3/4 inches overall on the width of the front and the back. So we have to account for that, and we have to account for that in our triangle when we square up this foundation. But for now, we can arbitrarily pick this first point and pull our 52 feet, 6 3/4 inches the other way, and then we'll start squaring up off of that. Just arbitrarily pick this point based on about how far I think I am away from this front wall, and we'll go 52 feet this way. So 52 feet, yeah, we're right at the wall. So we have to go significantly that wall. Well, you know, probably a foot from it. But yeah, so just like the other side, this side is still somewhat arbitrary. We're just getting more of a length here, and as long as we're beyond the footer length, which is 52 feet, 6 3/4 inches, we should be good. So we'll keep this one somewhere in here. And this represents the front of our footer, not necessarily the front of our foundation, because our footer is a little bit wider. Okay, so we're essentially looking at the house like this right now, where this is our front porch across the front. And we established this corner and this corner over here. So we have two options. We can get this back corner here, or we can get this back corner here. And like I said, the width of this is 52 feet plus our footer width, because the 52 feet is the actual foundation and the outer dimensions of the house. But the footer is going to be extended beyond that. So we have 52 feet, 6 3/4 inches by 28 feet, 6 3/4 inches to account for the two outside footer parts. So when we do that right triangle, we get a value that we're going to have to pull for our corner to square it up. And that's going to be 59 feet, 9 7/8 of an inch. And I'll go through the math on how we get that a little bit later at the end of the video. But for now, we're looking for that 59, 7 7/8, I think I said. And that'll square up our back two corners, which will give us this point here and this point back here. Forgot to mention one quick step here. The batter boards that we're installing are not actually where we're putting the footer. These are just extending beyond the footer. So we have a pin here to represent the actual corner of our footer. That way it's inside the batter board. We can leave the strings in. We pulled 52 feet and 6 3/4 off of that, just to make sure we're within the batter boards here. And it'd be nice to have some extra tape measures around, but so this screw right here, the intersection of these two lines is where we have our 52 feet, 6 3/4 inches. So I now have one tape measure over there. I'm going to extend it the diagonal for our right triangle. My dad's going to hold this tape measure here, and he's going to measure off this. The intersection of these 2 points is the true corner of our footer. So from that point down this leg, which is the horizontal part, should be the 28 feet plus our footer extension, which is another 6 3/4 inches since we're outside to outside. So we're going for 28 feet, 6 3/4 inches, and then our hypotenuse over there, which was, I believe, 59 feet, 9 7/8. And wherever that point is, we will put our batter boards up, make sure we're extending beyond that, and then we'll get our string lines on. Yeah, okay, my dad's gonna burn a foot because it is hard to hold on to these tape measures if you're just holding the end. So he's going to put, instead of 0 on that intersection, he's going to put 1 foot on that intersection, which means we actually, instead of 28 6 3/4, we need 29 6 3/4 for his tape measure. And then for us, we were at 59 feet 9 7/8 inches. So right there is where our corner is going to be. Put our batter board up a little bit extended beyond that. All right, so I'm just eyeballing this as close as I can, and then we'll make adjustments later. So now we're on our last corner here, which is the rear of the house for the walkout basement part. So this will end up pulling the same dimensions. So my dad's actually burning a foot off the diagonal now. So instead of 59 feet 9 7/8 on the diagonal, we'll be 60 feet 9 7/8 on the diagonal, because he's burning that foot, and we'll be 28 feet 6 3/4 inches here. 60 feet 9 7/8, 28 feet 6 3/4. And so that's a pretty quick layout. And now we have our batter boards in for our main square, and we have our true corners pretty much roughly marked out. So we could now square these up with a tape measure, try to move our string lines a little bit and see exactly where our corners are. But we also need to think about our bump outs, as well as where we're going to be digging our drop footing for the 3-foot frost line. So for now, I think we need to just fine tune this square a little bit. My dad and I are just going to kind of go back and forth with dimensions, see if we can get it as perfect as possible. I'd say within about an 1/8 inch or so is about what we're going for. And then we'll calculate our 6-foot bump out here, and we'll get that square. Well, we just spent a few minutes finishing up squaring up the corners here. And I'm glad we double checked these, because this back corner actually needed to come in about 3 inches. I don't know what I was looking at a tape measure. Maybe the video will show something, but everything's within, I'd say, a 1/16 of an 1/8 of an inch at this point. You know, we have some stretch in the tape, so it can only get so accurate. Our next step, we are going to take our back line here. So this is the rear of the house for our walkout basement. It's also 52 feet 6 3/4 of an inch from corner to corner. And we are going to mark our corners for the 6-foot bump out. So from our intersection of the string on each end, we have a 16-foot wing. So we're going to mark out 16 feet, put a mark on the string, put a pin, and then we come out 6 feet, over 20 feet, down 6 feet, and then we should end up 16 feet from our intersection here. So let's get that squared up next. You burning a foot? Right in the mud puddle. All right, so we just got this cleaned up. Originally, I don't know, I must have not burned a foot when my dad was measuring this one, because I was off a foot with this pin, and our corner here was looking pretty terrible. So sometimes you just have to stand back and look at this to see if it makes sense. I mean, if it's off a foot, that's pretty easy to see. But we are pretty much squared up now. So we have our 6-foot bump out this way, 20 feet 6 3/4 that way, another 6 foot back, and then over to our bump out. So this whole backside, the whole 52 feet with the bump out, will need to be dug out as a drop footer to maintain 3 feet below our frost line here. So I'm just going to take some white paint for now and mark out right where our line is, because this is the exterior of our footer. And then we'll dig in 20 inches, well, more than 20 inches, because our footer is 20 inches. So probably more like 30 inches. And we'll dig the whole inside of this out. And I'm hoping to leave our batter boards up, even though we take the string down, and I'll just follow my paint lines. And then once we have the ditch dug, we will be able to put our string lines right back up on the batter boards with the screws in place and start setting our former drain. But for now, just gonna get this painted, and I think that's gonna be it for today, because it's getting late and it's harder to work in the dark. Okay, that does it for tonight. So tomorrow we'll get these lines moved and start digging our drop footer. All right, guys, we're back. Another day. It's beautiful weather again. My dad's getting the transit set up. I'm gonna hop in the excavator, get it warmed up, because today we have our drop footers painted out here. So like I said yesterday, we just spray painted right on our line. This actually represents the very edge of the footer, the outer edge. So I'm going to dig probably 4 to 5 inches on the left side. We're going to be using the 36-inch bucket on the excavator. So that 36-inch deep drop footer should give us plenty of room for our 20-inch wide footer whenever it's actually set in place. So let's get the machine warmed up and get it down into the hole here. All right, so we took our strings down. We're going to try to leave the batter boards in as long as possible. We're shooting for 36 inches minimum below grade. So just took the transit and walked around the perimeter, found our highest point of the foundation of the footer to be right up in this part here. It's about an inch higher so than everywhere else. So bottom of the footer, from that point, we went 40 inches just to be safe with the 36. So we're going for a 40-inch deep hole from that point, which is our highest point on the footer. So dig basically this back part of the house, everywhere I have highlighted with paint, we'll dig that 40 inches deeper, and with a 3-foot bucket, that'll give us our width for the 20-inch footer. So I'm gonna hop in the machine, let's get to digging. We're back up here at the house site again today. Made great progress yesterday getting these trenches dug for our footers. Today's goal, we're going to get our lines back up, hopefully get some of these forms in. I did make 2 mistakes yesterday, small mistakes I think. So originally when I was looking at the depth of these drop footers, I was thinking 36-inch below grade. So my design calls for 36 inches below final grade, and I went off of the bottom of the top footer here. So we dug down 36 inches and we were going to go 40, but we ended up hitting some rock. So with 36, but I think realistically I could have gone 26 inches, because if I would have gone top of upper footer, which is a 10-inch footer, down 36 inches from that, could have dug 26 inches instead of 36 inches. Really not that big of a deal, but could have saved us some dirt moving. And of course we hit that rock in like the last 4 inches of the dig we were doing, so that would have helped a little bit. Our other issue is we are pretty much on that surface of whatever shale or hard rock this is the whole way across here. So this is kind of what we're dealing with, like that last 4 inches or so. I don't know if this is like some kind of shale or something. It breaks up easily, but it's just very brittle. And realistically, I don't know how easy it's going to be to get a concrete pin in there to actually put these forma drains in. So going to have to get a little creative with that. I'm still thinking about it. But for now, let's get these string lines up, see how square we are, and see how good our trenches are, most importantly. So another important thing I forgot to mention here, we left our back batter boards up because we didn't really need to dig back here. But in the front, I tried to leave the batter boards in as long as possible, but it was just too much of a pain to dig around. So we actually extended our lines back about 4 feet and put some pins in. It's probably hard to see here, but those basically represent our lines. They'll get us within probably ½ an inch of square, and then we'll just put our batter boards back up and re-square everything before we actually put the forms in. But should have thought of that initially, but yeah, in hindsight, keep your form boards or your batter boards well outside of where you plan on digging. All right, guys, well, we just spent the last couple hours here re-squaring everything, making sure we're pretty much right on. I'd say we're within about 1/8 of an inch on all of our corners. We also shot our grade, so all of our string lines are right where we need to be. So we have our front or our rear of the house 6-foot bump out here, our corners re-squared around, our 3-foot drop footer. We actually started putting in some of this former drain. We have our front 3-foot bump out squared up and in place, and it's not at grade, but we should be able to just do that with the transit. So for this former drain, it's actually a lot of good videos online already, but you have a 2x8 is the one I went with. So this is an 8-inch tall form for my 10-inch footer, and they have perforations on the outside, and then the other side's solid. So your perforations, this will go towards the outside and towards the inside of the slab. The concrete will be up against the smooth side. And there's 2 channels in this former drain. So your top channel is for your radon gas mitigation, and then your bottom channel is for your French drain system. So when you put these together, it just has these little couplers. They just slide right in. There's no glue or anything. And they have 90s and regular couplers. We also need 4 90, like vertical 90 couplers. Those are still on order for getting them to the drop footer. But for now, these go in just like regular footers. So we'll have our pins like this, holding it every 2 to 3 feet or so, all the way up. And we'll just keep our string lines tight. That way we keep our footer nice and straight and at our 10-inch grade. So some places the footer will be probably closer to 10.5 to 11 inches. We just found the highest point in our foundation, which was that point over there. It was about ½ an inch higher than everywhere else. So we went off that point and made our string line all the way around. So the minimum for our footer thickness will be 10 inches, but some places will be closer to 10.5 to 11. So we're gonna get these footers in, we're gonna get these former drains in and aligned. And by the time we finish that, we should be ready to get our drop footers in once those parts come in this week. Guys, we're back at it today. Another beautiful day working on the footer. We made some great progress last time. We're pretty much halfway through our drop footer, maybe a little bit less than halfway on this second board here. So my biggest issue we're fighting now is This is a 20-inch wide footer, and then it's, I believe, 2 inches wide for the forma drain. And I didn't quite dig my trench centered, so I knew I was going to have a 4-inch French drain, traditional French drain on the outside. Just cheap insurance. I wouldn't need it, but might as well throw one in. And right now my biggest pain is I'm pretty much right up against the wall here on the inside. And to drive the pins in, my concrete stakes, and then get a screw back there, I just have to dig out a little bit, so that obviously causes me to shovel more dirt out of the footer. So more labor, but need to get these set to height. My other concerns right now is on this side, I'm on stone, this stone shelf for most of the footer, the drop footer. And my only place that I'm really having a hard time is over on this side. So this is what I'm basically digging into, or trying to pound these pins into for the last piece here on this side. So I've been thinking about some ideas to mitigate that, so we will work on that later too. So hopefully we can get the rest of this footer on this, the inside part in, and get this finished up today. And then after we get the footers in, we also have all the rebar, just picked that up the other day. So we'll get that cut and bent and hopefully set in place either today or tomorrow. But let's get back to it. So my biggest problem so far with this whole footer project is I can't keep myself healthy. I've already been injured twice in unrelated projects, and I was also sick a couple times. So that's been most of the challenging part, is just trying to get this done, keep myself healthy. And with this bad weather we've been having, it hasn't really helped much either. But I'm certainly not complaining, because it could always be worse. And I am thankful that there are just a few days on the weekends to work on this and try to make some progress. Nice to be able to put a full piece in. I'll have to keep messing with these corners. I'm sure you guys picked this up already, but this is my 20-inch wide spacer to make sure my footer is at least that wide. So next we're coming up on a turn here. So the fastest way I've found to do it so far is you always want to get your 90 on here, because I keep messing up the extra length for the 90 when I try to measure it. Then we'll just slide it right back next to our other piece, and we'll measure over our 20 inches plus a little bit here, trying to make it about 20 1/4, just because why not make it a little bit bigger. Then we'll just mark this end right where the coupler is, and the couplers allow for 3 inches of insert, so we'll just go back 3 more inches. Cut right there. And just always make sure your perforations are to the outside. That's been in the back of my mind this whole time, is making sure that's right. So we have this corner here to do, and then out to that corner, 90 over, and then we're pretty much into the rock where I'm gonna have to start drilling and kind of think of something else here. So we are on a rock shelf on this part too, but it's this really flaky shale, or whatever you'd call this, where whenever I start driving the pins in, it does break apart. But the rest of that stuff over there, true rock. So I'm gonna get this last 2 corners done, and we'll catch back up when we get to the hard part. All right, well guys, we are finally at the hard part now. So the last corner went pretty smoothly, but unfortunately, when I went to set this pin in place for our last corner to this side, you get this sound. Yeah, so that's not good. So this corner, and our end piece down there, until we get everything tied together, tightened up a little bit, we're gonna have to come up with a new strategy here. So I grabbed a 3/4 inch masonry bit for the drill. So we're gonna see if that works, because those pins, I think they're about 3/4 of an inch, maybe a smidge underneath that in diameter. So I'm thinking if I drill the hole first, pre-drill it, and then drive the pin in, hopefully it'll be enough to get the pin in and that it'll actually have some holding strength. This is our setup here. We have just a standard drill, 3/4 inch by 12 inch bit, masonry bit. And I've never used the hammer drill on one of these battery powered drills like this. So there is a hammer on this drill. So I'm hoping that this will actually hammer drill into here. We have an actual hammer drill for when we're doing jobs, but unfortunately it's electric and I don't have electric up here. So my options were to use this or drag a generator up here, use the hammer drill for 3 or 4 holes, and then drag it all back. So that's our backup plan, but let's see if this works for now. Okay, that worked surprisingly better than I expected it to. Well, nothing has ever worked out that easily for me first try. So maybe this is a good sign. We got 2 more holes to drill. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Which is right here. And just gonna drill this down like the other one. Oh, that is so nice. Really impressed with this thing. It's almost kind of nice that there's some dust that stays behind in the hole, because it kind of acts as like an anchor. Okay. Yeah, so it might be hard to tell, but you see I actually had to bend or bow this little section of this long piece in. It's just a smidge too big for this 90. So I think these are the wrong ones. I was able to make them work, but I think they might just be like brand specific maybe, or different brand. I don't know. But they're working for now. It's just a little bit more of a struggle. So now that that one's in, I need to get my height here, get this cut off. Beautiful. I feel like that could be one molded piece, but whatever. It's in, it works. For the most part, water is going to be going through the footer drain and then down into this lower footer anyway. And then I have to pick a spot out here, somewhere either here or the middle, and have my water go to daylight that way out of a drain. So we only have this corner left, so get that in, and then we can start tightening up all the middle parts and throw in some extra pins in here just to kind of hold this thing somewhat straight. Well guys, we made great progress today. Really feels good to get these footers in. Pretty much have everything buttoned up now, and put some string lines on this. A couple of them were about 2 or 3 inches bowed and kind of out of whack on that inside one. So got everything straightened up for the most part. I think I need 2 more pins, but we're looking at a nice straight line, roughly 20 to 21 inches between everything. Some spots were a little bit wider, but rather have wider than too narrow. Still need to do the top inside form, but everything in this drop footer, except for, I want to get 1 more pin there on that coupler and 1 more pin in the middle of this one, and then we're done. And I also did a quick job shoveling out pretty much everything in here 1 more time, pretty good, just to since it's dry right now, and try to get everything dried out as much as possible so we can get this inspected this week. And we can't have any standing water like this. This is my lowest spot on the footer, and this part has always been full of water. Right now, probably about 5 or 6 inches of water in this deep spot, but this is a little pump here I have, borrowing it from my brother-in-law, which is really nice. Between the 2 of us, we pretty much have everything we need. So stick the end down there, and hopefully turn this on, let's run over to the outlet and see how it's looking. Oh yeah, this is looking a lot better now. So here's our outlet. Just came from over there. Try and push all this far away. But yeah, this thing's doing great. So we'll let this pump work for a while. I'm gonna pretty much try to let it pump out as much as possible. And then the wind and sunshine will just have to get the last little bit out for us. So we're gonna get this done. And then hopefully tomorrow my dad will be here and we will be ready to get rebar in the bottom of this. And then that'll be our final step. See you guys then. Well, it's time to start our rebar layout now. So we have about 25 sticks of 1/2-inch rebar and about 10 or 11 sticks of 3/4-inch rebar. So the 1/2-inch rebar, we will use these 16-inch long chairs in our 20-inch wide footer. And then we're gonna have the 3/4-inch rebar as verticals sticking up to resist our bending on the foundation whenever we have the dirt and the backfill pushed up against it. To tie everything together, we have these prefabbed wire ties and our little swivel wire tie hook. So that'll be tying all of our rebar together. The plan is to start in the corners, do our corner layouts first, because any overlaps for the 1/2-inch diameter, we need 40 times the diameter. So we'll go 20 inches of overlap at each joint, and just starting in the corners and doing our 90-degree bends seems like the easiest way to avoid doing too many laps. The last tool we'll need is our rebar bender. So this is actually a shear and a bender. I don't think it'll cut the 3/4-inch. I think it's only good for 5/8, but we should still be able to bend most of these with this piece of equipment here.
Okay. I see you there.
Now I think if I put it here, hopefully it bends it right there too.
Well, that should be good. Well, look at you.
Well,
nice. Wow.
1/2 inch is easy. Wait till we do this number 6. Looks like that dirt's still smashing it in. That's pretty good. we have to pull this bar. See this?
Yeah.
Okay, put your safety glasses on. And then let's pull this down as hard as you can. Pull hard. Oh, we got it. Nice job.
Oh, Walker, you're strong.
You cut this whole thing.
You want another one? Do another one?
Yeah, but this time I will do
Okay.
it by myself. This time I will do it by myself. I'm gonna watch. Use all your weight, huh?
Well, we're going to use the other part of this machine.
What's it called, Dad?
I don't know. A rebar bender cutter. Okay, pull it towards me. You ready? Look at us bending it. Here, come on my side. Pull hard. I need your help. A little bit more. Nice. That's
That was on Walker that little bit more.
good job.
When am I pushing her back up at your dad?
Stand on the very back there. Behind my dad.
On it?
Well, like just straddle. Add it to the way walking. Excellent team effort.
Wow.
You go, Marissa.
Yeah.
You need help? Yeah, tilt the bar forward. Watch your fingers there, bud. Yeah, because you want this little, like, felt line. Go. Nice. Now imagine doing that 3/4 inch. Okay, whoa. Way too far. That's okay. It's easy to bend back, but all right, take some pressure off.
That's 90 to me.
Yeah, I mean, you want to go a little bit fast, but okay. Now we have to bend this a little bit.
Hey, watch your feet, buddy. We need your help.
Sure.
I mean, you got it.
I mean, we need the leverage back in the back of the walker. All right, put some pressure on there so it doesn't turn. Yep. Okay, hold on. Watch out, Walker. Stand on the side, please. Okay, because now we can lay it down normally. Now that that part's out of the dirt. Finish it off. All right.
Another 90.
Yeah, this is about 9 feet up.
Why you know
This is how we have to put the
that? Right
rebar.
there?
Looks good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your fireball burnt with this piece of
It would, yeah.
Can I see?
Well, I'm not using it right now, but if I have to turn it back on, I will. All right, guys, well, what a day. I'm about halfway through bending those 3/4 inch pieces of rebar, and these things are no joke. So I'm putting about an 8-inch or so leg on it, and then we have about 3 feet sticking up. Those will go in our footers. We'll actually tie those to the rebar. That way everything is up off the ground. There's no chance for rust jacking or anything like that from the ground. Even our rebar chairs have little epoxied legs, so there's really nothing, there's no metal in contact with the ground. So that keeps everything dry, and it doesn't allow any kind of rusting to even work its way up through any rebar into the footer, even if it's on the bottom of the footer. Other than that, we have our waterfalls here for the step footer. Very well braced. My dad was working on this most of the day. We have our 40 diameters minimum. Most of these are way over. For any laps, and almost every corner we were able to just bend the corners and go around the corners. So that worked out pretty well. We got a lot done today. Still a few more little things to do, and unfortunately it's supposed to rain all week, so I doubt we're going to be able to get this inspected and poured anytime soon, but still a really productive day, so I'm happy with that. And the only other thing we have to do is tie these 3/4 inch rebar in, and we need to do our crossover tubes in the forma drain. So another thing I was able to do today was get the outlet pipe on, which I ended up putting right there. And I based that on, this will be the rear of the house. So our outlet pipe for the footer will come out this way through my big pile of dirt here. I'll have to dig this, and then just daylight over the hill there. And that trench will hold not only my forma drain pipe, but I'm also going to just put in a traditional French drain in too. I mean, they're cheap and easy, so might as well throw one in. Other than that, pretty much just doing a little bit of tidying up today, and we should be ready for inspection soon. So we'll catch up with you then. Well guys, we are officially done and ready for inspection at this point. So I was able to get these vertical rebar in place. Originally, I wanted to just tie a piece on our existing rebar on either the chairs or the rebar, but that wasn't really holding up very well. It still wanted to tip over. So what we came up with to keep our metal out of the ground still, I went and got this 3/8 fiberglass rebar. So we were able to pound this fiberglass rebar, which isn't going to rust or anything like that, into the ground. And then we tied our 3/4 inch rebar to that and to the internal horizontal rebar. And that ended up giving us a really nice fit and a nice sturdy piece of rebar in there. I mean, it's probably going to tip over a little bit as we pour concrete, but it's in place right now. It's good for inspection, and it should be all right to pour in the next couple days, as long as the weather holds up. Another thing we were able to do is put these crossover pipes in. So the crossover pipe, this is basically going to tie in our outside French drain with our inside French drain, and that way when it goes out our exit over there, they'll pretty much all balance out and the water will flow evenly through each channel. So I put that one pretty much as far away from the outlet as I could. That way they kind of merge at different locations across the footer. And then the other one, I wanted one in this drop footer too, so I put another one just up here, and I put it on this front part just because this is not going to be a load-bearing wall. So I mean, it probably wouldn't make a difference, but if I could choose to put it in a non-load-bearing wall for foundation purposes, then might as well pick that versus one of the end walls here that's going to be supporting our trusses. These 3/4 inch rebar, these are every 40 inches, and basically the reason I went with 3/4 is just pure moment of the wall. So I really don't have anything on the rear of the house, which is going to be the drop footer. So it's kind of overkill there. But up against the back wall there, I'm going to have 8 to 9 feet of unbalanced fill. So that 3/4 inch rebar is going to act like a resistance to the bending of our foundation wall. So as it's trying to push it and tip it over, that 3/4 inch is going to be resisting that load, and the shear of the rebar will be holding back any kind of tipping force. There'll also be horizontal pieces down through our ICF when we get to that point, but exciting enough, we are ready for inspection. So I'll let you guys know how that goes whenever I get it inspected. And then we're planning to pour next Friday, so a week from today. All right guys, well, it's a beautiful day here, and it's actually pour day for our footers. So we got the last little bit of water pumped out last night just so it can have a good opportunity to dry as long as possible. And the concrete trucks and the pumpers should be here any minute. So let's get ready for them and we'll get this concrete poured. So while I have a second, one other thing I did here was I made these boxes 2 by 2 by 6. That way I could use any excess concrete, because I did have to order a couple extra yards of concrete just to make sure I had enough for the mushrooming out at the bottom of the forms. So what I did here, I just made a little framing wall. I have a ratchet strap on the bottom third because the lower part is going to have more pressure out than the top. So I put the straps on the bottom third, and I have a piece of rebar that I just bent up real quick, a little 1/2 inch rebar, little slot on the side so I can put that in there, and then a little stake holding that in. I put a piece of 2 by 6 on the other side that matches where my rebar pieces are, so right in the middle. I wanted to use a piece of 2-inch foam for that, but I didn't end up buying one in time, so just going to use a piece of 2 by 6 It'll be a little bit harder to chip out afterwards, but you know, still doable. So that little piece of 2x6 will basically be the recess once I chip it out of the concrete that the little piece of rebar curve will sit in. That way they'll actually sit flat with each other. So I've never tried this before. I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll give it a shot, and we'll be able to at least use the excess concrete for something useful, make one of those little block walls for some extra stone and stuff. So I'll let you know how this goes. Hopefully this will be a cheap alternative to like the metal forms that you normally see for these. All right, guys, so we just finished up. Luckily, my father-in-law and my dad stopped over too to help out because we were fighting a little bit with this drop footer. So I made a couple mistakes here, or just had some bad luck, maybe a combination of the two, but I had one blowout. This form ended up a little bit wider, probably closer to the 30 inches. My stakes gave out, so that widened up. Still good on the height. The other problem I had was, even though I only had about 1.5 to 2 inch gap under a lot of these spots of the footer, I never expected it to flow out as far as it did, and the concrete was just so wet, and being a pump mix, it made it seem even wetter. So we ended up losing a lot of concrete on the sides, so I just tried to keep it away as best I could. The worst of it was over here. This side actually held up a lot better, not too much out the sides. It was mostly just that first side. And then of course our bulkheads, we had a little bit of a kick out with our plywood on the bulkhead, but nothing too crazy. Just had to do like 3 lifts on that. So we did a couple lifts, and then we just piled up about a wheelbarrow or so, 2 wheelbarrows on each side, and then just shoveled it in a little bit more gently as we were going, so that way we could actually get that to stop flowing out at the bottom. But other than that, like I said, a few spots here where we had our 2x6 on the bottom, I knew we were having a decent gap, but just ended up losing a lot more concrete than I expected to the sides. But overall, we still only used the original 15 yards I ordered, and we actually had about probably 1.5 yards extra, which is, I think I ordered 3 yards extra is what I was expecting. So still good to have that little bit extra. And I'm gonna go over here. I actually got to make 1 block out of that too. So with the extra he had in the truck, I was able to make 1 block here. Like I said, this is 2 by 2 by 6. I have a piece of rebar on this side, just like how it is here, just bent a little bit and sticking out. So that piece of rebar I'll be able to lift, and then this, you know, it's probably not quite 2 by 2, it's probably 2 by 4 inches shorter too, but this is the side anyway, so that won't matter. And then of course we have our 2x6 that I'll show you guys how to knock out and be able to stack these up as we do more concrete jobs. I'll probably end up having 1 yard or 2 extra every time we pour something, so it'll be nice. That block worked out really well. Really like no movement at all with that, so kind of a good cheap alternative to the metal ones. But for now, just going to finish cleaning up here, and then we can start getting all of our stone inside our foundation to do our floor and then get our walls up. So that pretty much wraps things up for the footer. And as always, we're going to have all of our costs down below, as well as this portion of the build, so feel free to look at that. And if you want to stick around to see some math for how we did the corners and squaring up, I'll start posting that at the end of this video. But until next time, I'll see you guys then. Thanks for watching. Okay guys, so thanks for sticking around. Like I said, I'm going to go through just a little bit of the math I went through to square up this foundation. So I have a pretty crude drawing here of our house. So we have the front on this side and the rear on this side. So when we first started this house, you can see I have my overall foundation dimensions as the solid lines, and then this little dotted line I have on the outside, hopefully it comes up well on camera, that's actually the outside of the footer. So we have to account for that in our calculations. So laying out the footer was actually starting in this point, the very corner, and that was just an arbitrary point we picked first. And then we came straight across here to this other outside point of the footer. Again, this doesn't have anything to do with the outside dimensions of the actual house. This is the footer, which is an additional couple inches. So my footer width is 20 inches for my footer. So we have to account for that here. And overall, the footer outside to outside adds 6 3/4 inches. So that is split between this side and this side. And we come up with that extra distance because our footer is 20 inches wide, but our foundation, the ICFs, are 13 1/4 inches wide. So the difference here is 6 3/4 of an inch. So that 6 3/4 of an inch is going to be split between the right side and the left side for outside to outside. So that gives us an extra distance of 3 3/8 of an inch. 3 3/8 of an inch all the way around the perimeter. So that means instead of our overall length from corner to corner of the exterior of the house being 52 feet, like on our drawings, our outside to outside dimension is 52 feet, 6 3/4 of an inch. And that's corner to corner of foundation. Same thing with our top to bottom on the wing here. Instead of being 28 feet like our plans show, it's actually the corner to corner of footer is 28 feet, 6 3/4 of an inch. Where it doesn't affect anything is where we have this inside corner. So inside corner to exterior corner, the offset is the same. So that is still going to be our 16 feet. And then same thing with our 3 feet down here and our little 6 foot bump out here. So knowing all these dimensions, our exterior dimensions, we start from this point and then we arbitrarily made our line over here to this exterior corner. So, and we know we went initially 52 feet, 6 3/4 of an inch. That established our first line. That was our first string line. And once you have that point, then everything can be squared off of those 2 points. So after that, the next point we are going to get is this point over here. And this will be squared off of our front 2 points. So we'll call this side C because we're just going to be making right triangles. We'll call this point here, this point to this point A, and this point to this point side B. And to get C, obviously we just do our A squared plus B squared equals C squared, Pythagorean theorem for just right triangles. And since we know our A is 28 feet, 6 3/4, and our B is 52 feet, 6 3/4 inch, we can solve that. And we end up getting a value of 59 feet, 59.82 feet. So the biggest question is, how do you turn this 59.82 feet into something usable on a ruler? So 59.82 feet, we know 59 feet is going to be absolute since that's here, but we have 0.82 feet. So 0.82 times 12 gives us 9.84 inches. So 59 feet, 9.84 inches. Okay, now we have this 8.4. So what do we do with this? So 0.84 times, I like to do mine in eighths because that's pretty accurate for me, but you can do it in any fractions of an inch you want, 16, 30 seconds. But in this case, we'll do it in eighths of an inch. So times 8. So that's 6.72. So now we're at 59 feet, 9 and 6.72 eighths. So 6.72 eighths of an inch. And roughly you can get this, you can just estimate this as either 6 or 7/8 since it's closer to 7. And I would just basically call this close enough at 59 feet, 9 and 7/8 of an inch. So that would be my number I'm shooting for. Like I said, if you wanted to do this in 16ths instead and be even more accurate, you could do that too. We would just have 59 feet and we would do 9 inches, 0.84 times 16 is 13 sixteenths, we'll call that 13.5 sixteenths. So 13 sixteenths is the closer value. Hard to read sixteenths on a tape measure, especially for construction. Eighth of an inch is plenty. And so doing this method for all of our points here, we have every corner we can go to. And I like to square an entire building off of one singular point or one origin, like this point is what I did for this one. So you can go to all points on our building. So for this case, we have our corner up here, we have a corner down here, corner on this side, corner over here. You can check any point. I like to go off one origin because the error does not accumulate. So you can imagine if you were squaring one of these points and then you use this point to square this point, that's doable too. But if you were off by a quarter or 3/8 of an inch here, then you're already starting out with the accumulated error going into the next dimension. So if you start from this point, you just get less stack up on your error. And looking at some of our numbers, you see this is basically the cheat sheet I was working off of when we were squaring up the building. And I have all my right triangles laid out for whatever lengths I needed. And I was just trying to pull the tape measure and find each of those points as we were squaring up the building. So hopefully this helps somebody. Squaring a building really isn't that intimidating. You just have to know your triangles, double check all your math. Using a steel tape measure really helps because it doesn't stretch like a vinyl one. And just make sure you're very accurate with each dimension at this stage because everything stacks up after this. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.